And on that note, we turn to Mike Arnold, who's an attorney. And you know how angry some people can get at attorneys. Mr. Arnold, thank you very much for coming on the program.
Yeah, Lars, thanks for having me.
Glad to do it. Now, you wrote to me last week and said you want to make sure that your office is prepared for whatever might come in through the front door. How are you planning to accomplish that?
Well, we're taking a slightly different approach than Ginny and the Oregon Senate is in attempting to prevent firearm-related tragedies. Next month, we're going to host an all-day class for our employees on gun safety at the Emerald Valley Armory down in Cresswell. And we're going to have all 10 of our staff members and their spouses and significant others are welcome, too. And it's going to be a concealed handgun licensing class, an educational class, as well as some range time.
Very good. So people will get their concealed carry permits in some cases?
Well, that's the option they'll have. The purpose of the class is, let the staff and attorneys learn how to handle firearms as well as take the necessary steps if they choose to get a permit.
Very good.
We have an office policy that allows for concealed carry on the premises. We've had that in effect for probably 4 or 5 years. And we've heard a lot of the folks, throughout the years they've mentioned, they expressed interest, but a lot of folks at our office just don't have the time, and some are worried about the finances, and some, particularly 80% women are Arnold Law, and a lot of them are intimidated by what they perceive to be the class, the sort of folks that might be there and the questions that they may be afraid to ask. So we wanted to create an environment where if they choose to go forward and exercise their right at the office through our policy, they'll be able to do it comfortably and have a good educational basis for doing it.
I think that's a reasonable thing to do. Over the weekend, obviously, there was a lot of email traffic to me and a lot of Facebook traffic, and somebody sent me a little post of the sign outside of Busch Gardens, which is down in Tampa, Florida. And the sign actually says, for the safety of the public here, concealed carry is welcome here at Busch Gardens. And I looked up online and found their website just to make sure somebody hadn't had some fun with Photoshop. And sure enough, they are one of the places, a very public place, that tells people it's perfectly okay. While we've been talking about the fact that these so-called gun-free zones are one of the most dangerous places you can be in America, I'm glad to see businesses like yours embrace that idea.
Yeah, Arnold Law is not a gun-free zone. We have two policies that I think are kind of congruent in this situation. We have our right to carry policy at the office, but we also have a policy for parents that they're allowed and permitted to bring their kids into the office full-time if they choose for the first year.
Yeah, you mentioned that to me.
That's been real popular, and I've noticed over the years that the moms in particular, like about the time that they're pregnant or they're at least after they have the kids, they become a lot more inquisitive about the concealed carry policy at the office and a lot more inquisitive about guns in general. So those two policies work in conjunction with one another are something that we're just looking to move forward on.
Hey, what kind of law does Arnold Law specialize in?
Well, we're a family firm in the sense that we do family law, we do criminal defense, DUI, and some complex civil litigation.
But when you do family law, when you mention family law, for people who don't know, that means that occasionally you might handle divorces and child custody.
Yeah, child custody, and some of the attorneys do juvenile work, mainly dependency cases where the government's trying to take a kid away from a parent, or may represent the kids in those situations too. And then the custody side of things, you sometimes will get some angry people, and I don't think we're any more likely than any place else to suffer from a mass shooting or workplace violence. And I think that statistically it's pretty darn unlikely. I heard an NPR stat this morning that you'd have to wait thousands of years before your particular school got attacked. But if something like that happens, I just want everyone to feel prepared that if they so choose to exercise that right, they can do it. I think if folks really want to protect their kids, it's probably a better investment to invest in an F-150, pickup truck instead of an AR-15, because obviously car accidents are a big hazard. But that's just another arrow we have in our quiver to protect our kids is to conceal carry.
Any other thoughts on why what happened last week happened? Because you had a young man there who clearly had some psychological problems. We're hearing today he might have actually been on some pretty heavy-duty psychotropic drugs. and that might have been one of the explanations behind why he did such an outrageous thing. It's kind of ironic that we've found that there's a British newspaper that actually does much better coverage of some things happening in the United States, and they had already, managed to find out some things about the shooting in Connecticut that even the American papers have not been reporting. And we've been watching the Daily Mail for long enough to know that their stories have turned out to be reliable in the long run, which is always the best test of information. They said that this young man shot his mother in the face and then stole her guns and went to the school and shot it up, but that they also reported that he had a dispute with 4 teachers, or the teachers and the principal, the day before the shooting. And if that turns out to be accurate, and we've had a lot of changing information on that story since Friday morning, it would be very interesting to know why, if the school knew that they had an agitated young man who'd come to the school one day, why they didn't have extra security the next day.
I'd love to read his mind posthumously. I mean, that would be great. What I do know, there's evil in the world, and the world's a pretty crowded place. And I think, as far as history goes, we're in a pretty safe time.
Yeah, we are.
However,
we really are.
I think it's everyone's personal responsibility to keep their eyes open, to have some situational awareness, and to protect themselves and plan to protect those that they love. And that looking at policies at school districts, we're putting a lot in the hands of schools. And I heard the gentleman speak about that this morning, about wanting to encourage that at the schools. And I think that's really a step that the public service unions can do. I mean, they can negotiate for a concealed handgun right in their contracts. They can do that. It's something that the unions could advocate for it. If there's enough folks interested, enough women in particular that are worried about domestic violence, or which is a more likely thing to happen at a school, I think, than a mass shooting. But that's something that they can talk to the union reps about and actually become a vocal advocate for.
Mike, do you remember the case of Ms. Katz, the teacher in Medford, who was scared to death of her estranged husband or ex-husband, and she was questioned, given the 3rd degree by her school administration simply because she had a permit, and she insisted that she wanted to push for her right to be able to carry at school. She had not raised the issue because she wasn't breaking the law even if she did carry, and the Medford schools went to court to keep her from having that right. And as I recall, her union didn't do a damn thing to support her.
Yeah, and I also remember that case in Washington State a couple of years ago where I think it was at a college where the gal was shot and killed by an estranged ex of some sort. And I think that what this to me is really it's not really a Second Amendment issue. It's Second Amendment. That's something that's been talked about a lot, but I look at it more as a self-defense issue, like an innate human right we have to protect ourselves. We know that the right to self-defense in the criminal code is a creature of statute. Yet we spend a lot of time talking about the Second Amendment. Now, I think that if folks look at it more from that line, they'll realize it's really a women's rights issue, too. I know, talking to our domestic violence victim clients, they are interested. They're asking questions about how to protect themselves because they know that a protective order isn't a shield. It's not a bulletproof vest. And we get asked a lot, well, what do I do? What do I do if he comes to my house? What do I do if he comes to me in public? And in the past, I would, you'd hopefully have a concerned uncle or brother or father take you out to BLM or to the bottom 40 to do some target shooting. But the more urbanized we get and the farther folks move away from home, they don't have that resource as much anymore. We're planning in March to do a women's only self-defense class that we're going to pay for at least 20 members of the public. And we're hoping to educate particularly women from domestic violence situations on their options with firearms and do some range time to see if that is a tool they want to employ to keep themselves safe.
I think that's sensible. And when you do that, let us know and we'll let the public know about it. Here's the thing I keep thinking. I know that in theory, a public that respected a judge's order, that protective order would actually do something. And I know there are guys who think they've been wronged because somebody has inappropriately got a protective order against them. But my question to them is always whether it was obtained based on real things or whether the woman told a whole pack of lies, for example, to the judge. If she doesn't want you around, how hard is it to stay the heck away? And if you keep turning up on her front porch at 2 o'clock in the morning, whether she told lies to get the protective order or not, I don't really care. She's got it. You've been told to stay away. You know, like you said, in the old days, her brother and her father would probably come over and set the boyfriend straight, but you can't get away with that anymore. So if every other week in Oregon, some idiot, whether it's a man or a woman, with a protective order against them, ended up getting shot on the front porch of their ex-girlfriend or ex-wife or ex-husband's, house, I would think it would have an effect on the rest of the folks with protective orders against them to say, yeah, maybe it's not such a great idea to go by and visit unannounced, uninvited, and unwanted.
I mean, if you're a victim of domestic violence, it would be good for your perpetrator to know that this isn't a gun-free zone.
Yeah,
I think that would prevent a lot of casualties, and I think that we're always worried about people that to use their firearms, or what about collateral damage? But that example up at Clackamas is great. This guy just brandished a firearm and may have diffused the situation. Now, most, as we know just from reading the literature, that most usage of firearms by lawful concealed carry holders, they're not even shooting the gun; they're brandishing them, and then the folks run away. People don't want to do that cost-benefit analysis and confront somebody who's armed. It just doesn't make any sense.
Hey, I appreciate the time, and Mike, you let us know when you want to get that word out to the public. We appreciate it.
Great. Thanks a lot, Lars. You take care.
You bet. Mike Arnold is an attorney in Eugene, and I've got a couple of naysayers coming up next right here on the Lars Larson Show.